Adeyemi stood on the balcony of his high-rise penthouse, looking down at the glittering city lights of Lagos. A warm night breeze brushed against his face, but even in all this wealth, his heart felt hollow. Money had filled his pockets, but something important had been left behind long ago, the dusty little village where he was born, a place few even remembered now. He had been Adeyemi the barefoot boy once, running after goats and dreaming of owning a real pencil, not just a stick in the dirt. Now he was Mr. Adeyemi Omateo, one of the youngest billionaires on the continent, with investments stretching from Cape Town to Cairo. But none of it mattered when he closed his eyes at night. Tonight, as he leaned against the railing, he decided. No more boardrooms. No more hollow congratulations. He would return to his village. Not as a billionaire. Not even as himself. He would return as a nobody, a simple man with a simple mission, to build a school. The next morning, Adeyemi's private jet waited on the tarmac. But he refused it. Instead, he packed 2 bags, put on rugged jeans, a plain white shirt, old boots, and a battered cap. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized himself. Perfect. He traveled by bus, squeezed between grandmothers with woven baskets and young boys shouting into their mobile phones. Dust flew through the open windows as the ancient bus bumped along cracked roads. He smiled. This was the world he missed. By late afternoon, he stepped off at a sleepy, sun-drenched village called Aiyedun. The smell of roasting yams filled the air, and roosters crowed somewhere behind the mud brick houses. Children raced barefoot across the fields, laughter trailing behind them. No one recognized him. Good. That was the plan. Adeyemi slung his bag over his shoulder and walked into the heart of the village, a small square shaded by giant baobab trees. Elders sat on worn stools, sipping palm wine and talking about the rain that hadn't come yet. He approached them humbly, head slightly bowed. Good evening, sirs, he said in Yoruba, his voice steady. One of the elders, a wiry man with skin like polished mahogany, peered at him. You are not from here. No, Baba, Adeyemi said respectfully. But I wish to stay. I am a builder. I want to help. The old men exchanged glances. In villages like Aiyedun, strangers were rare, and those who offered help were even rarer. What can you build? Another elder asked, testing him. A school, Adeyemi replied, heart-pounding. The elders burst into laughter, slapping their knees. A school? Here? With what money? The government had promised such things for years and nothing ever came. But they were good-natured people. And they could always use another pair of hands. So, they agreed. You can stay in the old guest hut, the chief elder said. But if you are a builder, you must prove it. Adeyemi smiled. I will. His first days were hard, and full of funny surprises. He woke at dawn to roosters crowing right outside his window. His soft billionaire's hands blistered as he mixed cement under the burning African sun. He learned to laugh along with the village boys when he slipped and fell into muddy puddles. They called him Mr. Builder because he never gave a real name. He made friends with everyone. Auntie Kemi, who sold jollof rice under the giant mango tree. Old Baba Tand, who loved telling long, impossible stories. Little Sod, who dreamed of becoming a doctor but had never even seen a real school. But the one who fascinated Adeyemi most was Zora. Zora was a young woman with fierce eyes and a smile that could chase away storm clouds. She was the village's only teacher, teaching children under a giant baobab tree with nothing but scraps of paper and her huge heart. Adeyemi watched her one morning as she stood in front of 20 barefoot kids, holding up a battered chalkboard. Education, she told them passionately, is your magic. Your passport. Your sword. Your shield. Adeyemi felt something stir inside him. It had been years since anyone spoke with such belief, such fire. he decided then. Not just any school. A beautiful school. A magical school. A place worthy of her dreams. But how? The villagers had no money. No materials. And he couldn't reveal who he really was. That night, under a sky bursting with stars, Aiyedun made a secret plan. Using a second phone hidden in his bag, he contacted a trusted friend back in the city, a man who owed him a favor. "I need cement, wood, bricks, paint, everything," he whispered into the phone. "Deliver it quietly to Aiyedun. No questions asked." By sunrise 2 days later, a truck groaned into the village, piled high with building supplies. The villagers gathered around, eyes wide with wonder. "Who sent all this?" they asked. Aiyedun shrugged modestly. "A small gift. From a friend." He was lying, of course. But for once, it was a good lie. The building began. Everyone pitched in. The women carried buckets of water on their heads. The men hauled bricks and hammered nails. Even the children helped, painting the walls bright colors. Laughter filled the air. Music played. Dust rose like golden mist around them. It was hard work, but it felt holy. Aiyedun worked harder than anyone. He lifted, mixed, carried, sweated, and joked. His heart felt lighter than it had in years. One afternoon, Zora approached him, wiping sweat from her brow. "You," she said, grinning, "are full of surprises, Mr. Builder." He smiled shyly. "Just doing what I can." "You could have left after one day," she said. "Many would have. But you stayed." "Why?" Aiyedun hesitated. How could he explain the ache in his heart? The guilt? The longing to give back? Instead, he said simply, "Because dreams deserve to breathe." Zora looked at him for a long time, something softening in her eyes. Then she nodded. "Yes. They do." They stood there in the golden sunset, surrounded by half-built walls and laughter. For the first time in a long time, Aiyedun didn't feel like a billionaire. He just felt alive. But deep down, he knew. He couldn't hide his truth forever. The village was already starting to ask, "Who really is this mysterious Mr. Builder? And why does he seem too good to be true?" Word spread quickly through Aiyedun. Mr. Builder had become the village's mystery man, the kind who arrived out of nowhere with truckloads of supplies, who sweated alongside farmers, who smiled at children like they were treasure. Women gossiped under mango trees. Old men squinted suspiciously over their palm wine cups. Who is he really? Auntie Kemi wondered aloud one afternoon, plucking yams. "No ordinary builder has soft hands and straight teeth like that," said Bobatund, stroking his graying beard. "And whoever heard of a poor man giving gifts for free?" added another elder. Yet nobody could deny the joy and progress he had brought. The school walls were already rising. Bright murals danced along the plaster, stars, lions, children flying across giant books. It looked like a miracle had bloomed right out of the red African soil. Aiyedun kept his head down and worked harder. But deep inside, he knew time was running short. Meanwhile, Zora became more curious about him. She often found excuses to talk to him, handing him water when he was too tired to ask, discussing which colors the classroom should be painted, helping him lift heavy beams. There was a quiet understanding growing between them, like seeds sprouting silently underground. One evening, as they sat resting under the baobab tree, she asked him the question he had been dreading. "Why are you really here, Aiyedun?" He almost dropped his cup. "No builder just wakes up and decides to save a village he's never seen before," she continued softly, studying him. "You don't have the hands of a laborer. Your eyes, they've seen cities. Skyscrapers." Aiyedun swallowed hard. The sunset painted her face in shades of honey and bronze. He wanted so badly to tell her everything. But he smiled instead, masking the truth behind the only armor he had left. "I just believe," he said, "that small places deserve big dreams." Zora didn't push. She simply nodded, as if that answer was enough, for now. But her knowing gaze haunted him all night. The school's roof was the last great battle. They needed more timber beams than Adeyemi had secretly ordered. The villagers pooled what little money they had and sent a group to the nearby town to buy more. While they waited, disaster struck. A fierce storm rolled across the savannah one evening, darkening the sky with furious clouds. Thunder shook the earth. Torrential rains battered the unfinished school walls, melting the fresh plaster and toppling the wooden scaffolding. Adeyemi stood helpless under a tiny shelter, fists clenched, heartbreaking as the school, their dream, collapsed in the storm. The next morning was devastating. Mud swallowed half the foundation. Splintered beams lay scattered like bones. The villagers stood in silence, faces long with sorrow. Even Zora's spirit seemed dimmed. She wiped tears from her eyes, trying to hide them. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Adeyemi, covered in mud, his jeans ripped at the knee, stood up. "We rebuild," he said simply. His voice was low but unshakable. "We rebuild stronger. Together." Something powerful moved through the villagers. Despair shifted into stubbornness. Pain became energy. By midday, they were clearing the wreckage. By nightfall, laughter once again floated across the fields. A few days later, the new timber arrived, twice the amount needed. Adeyemi had secretly doubled the order without telling anyone, paying from his private accounts through hidden channels. With stronger beams, new bricks, and relentless determination, the school began to rise again. This time, it stood taller. Brighter. It became a symbol, a stubborn flower refusing to be crushed by storms. Zora organized the children into small teams, teaching them songs and painting walls with inspiring words. "Knowledge is power, dreams are seeds, courage grows here." Adeyemi watched her with awe. One afternoon, he found her sketching a mural of a phoenix, a great firebird, rising from ashes. "Why a phoenix?" he asked, curious. She smiled, her fingers stained with paint. "Because even if you fall, even if you burn, you rise again. Stronger. Brighter." Adeyemi stared at her longer than he should have. If only she knew, that was exactly how he felt. But everything changed one fateful day. A black SUV rolled into the village, sleek, polished, completely out of place in dusty little Aiyedun. The villagers gathered around, shielding their eyes from the sun, murmuring. From the SUV stepped two sharply dressed men, security agents from Adeyemi's private corporation. He froze where he stood, heart pounding. The men marched straight to him. "Sir," one of them said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "we've been looking everywhere. Your absence is causing concern across all branches. Your stock shares are volatile. The media is asking questions." The village square fell deathly silent. Children stopped playing. Women stopped cooking. Men stood frozen, eyes wide. Zora stared at him, mouth slightly open. You're. She whispered, connecting the dots. Adeyemi closed his eyes. There was no hiding anymore. He stepped forward, mud still caked on his boots, and faced the villagers he had come to love. "My name is Adeyemi Omateo," he said quietly. "I am not just a builder." The gasps were audible. Auntie Kemi dropped her basket of peppers. Bobotan let out a loud, astonished whistle. "I am a billionaire," Adeyemi continued, voice trembling slightly. "But here. I only wanted to be someone who built something real." The villagers stared at him in disbelief. Some with awe. Some with confusion. Some with hurt. And Zara looked heartbroken. She turned and walked away, the phoenix mural shimmering behind her. Aiyedun stood alone in the middle of the square, the truth heavier than any brick he had ever lifted. The next morning, Aiyedun was not the same. The air buzzed, not with the energy of construction or the laughter of children, but with a thick tension you could slice with a machete. Whispers floated between doorways. Children peered cautiously from behind market stalls. Women drew water from the well without meeting Aiyedun's eyes. He had gone from Mr. Builder to the billionaire imposter overnight. And it stung worse than any storm. Aiyedun sat alone by the crumbled fire pit in the center of the village. He hadn't slept. Had barely eaten. The villagers' coldness sliced at him more deeply than any angry word ever could. He had tried to do good. He had become part of them. Yet now, every smile felt erased, every friendship snapped like a twig underfoot. His heart ached most for Zara. She hadn't spoken to him since walking away. Not a glance. Not a word. She had trusted him. Believed in him. And he had hidden the most important piece of himself. Later that afternoon, Zara gathered the village children by the half-finished school. Without Aiyedun. She handed out brushes and buckets, setting them to work painting murals along the cracked walls, trying to salvage what remained of their hope. Aiyedun watched from a distance, feeling like a ghost. He could have left. Jumped into a sleek black car and disappeared back into his world of glass towers and boardrooms. But something stronger rooted him to that red earth. He had to fix this. Not with money. Not with grand speeches. But with truth. The following day, under the vast African sky, Aiyedun called a village meeting. Not with megaphones. Not with bodyguards. Just himself, wearing the same dusty jeans and boots he had arrived in. Slowly, suspiciously, the villagers gathered. Zara stood near the back, arms folded. Auntie Kemi clutched her basket tighter. Bobotan tapped his cane, waiting. Aiyedun cleared his throat, heart thundering. I lied to you, he began. Not because I thought you were less. But because I felt less. Murmurs stirred the crowd. In my world, he continued, voice steady, people only see me for my wealth. Not my heart. Not my dreams. Not my failures. I came here to build something real. Something that wasn't measured in profits, but in promises. He took a shaky breath. I failed you. I thought hiding my identity would let me belong. Instead, I broke your trust. He looked around, at the weathered faces of Aiyedun, at Zara, her eyes stormy and uncertain. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I'm asking for a chance to finish what we started. Together. Silence. A heavy silence. Then, from the crowd, a little boy, Oba, one of the students, stepped forward. He carried a battered paintbrush in his tiny hand. Wordlessly, Oba dipped it into a bucket of blue paint and dabbed a bold streak across the unfinished wall. One streak. A sign. A new beginning. The villagers looked at each other, hesitant, unsure. Then Auntie Kemi shrugged, smiled slightly, and picked up a trowel. Bobotan grunted, nodded, and lifted a timber beam. One by one, the villagers stepped forward. Side by side. No longer builders and billionaires. No longer poor and rich. Just people. Dreamers. Zara remained still. Her gaze pierced through Aiyedun like sunlight through rain clouds. After a long, long moment, she approached. Standing just inches from him, she studied his face, searching for something real beneath the dust, sweat, and scars. Without a word, she placed a paintbrush into his hand. Her fingers lingered for a heartbeat. Then she turned back to the wall, picking up her own brush. They would rebuild. Not because of who he was, but because of who they were together. The school rose like a phoenix from ashes. The second roof was stronger. The murals brighter. The playground wider. The laughter louder. On the grand opening day, the whole village turned out. Dignitaries from nearby towns came too, curious about the school built by mystery and dreams. But Adeyemi refused grand speeches. He stood in the crowd like everyone else, beaming quietly. It was Zoro who stood at the front, microphone in hand, her voice carrying across the fields. This school, she said proudly, was not built by a billionaire. It was built by hands that believed, by hearts that refused to break. The villagers roared their agreement, clapping and cheering. Adeyemi's heart swelled so much he thought it might burst. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, he found Zora sitting under their old baobab tree. He sat beside her, neither speaking for a long while. Finally, she broke the silence. "You built more than a school," she said quietly. "You built a home." Adeyemi turned to her, hope flickering in his chest. "And you showed me what a real home feels like," he whispered. Slowly, carefully, he reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The stars above them shimmered like the dreams they had dared to believe in. Together, they stared at the sky, knowing that no matter where life pulled them next, a piece of their hearts would always be rooted deep in Aiyedun's red earth. Where a billionaire learned to be human. And where dreams were built, not with money, but with love.